Lawrence LeBrocq, managing partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory. I'm here with world champion Luke Fernandez. He is an MMA fighter, fights out of the light heavyweight division, undefeated in both his amateur and professional career. Where are you from, Luke?
I grew up in Forked River, New Jersey, 15, 20 minutes from here.
How did you get involved in MMA? What drew you to that sport?
So I wrestled in high school and then in college. And then my dad's always been big into boxing. I mean, he's my hands coach. And just watching boxing growing up, transitioning to watching MMA, I was introduced to MMA by one of my uncles, like when Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell and those guys were fighting. So that was super interesting to me. Then from there, kind of was just after college, I wasn't competing anymore. And it kind of just was in this like limbo where I was working, I was hanging out with friends, going to the bar, that type of scene. Yeah, through a mutual friend, met my coach, and I just wanted to compete again. I tried boxing and the amateurs and stuff, but just amateur boxing in New Jersey is kind of difficult to get matchups, especially like heavyweight and stuff. So after training for a few months and stuff, doing diamond gloves and fights falling through and stuff like that, I ended up just like I didn't want to commit any more time to boxing and not getting the fights I was trying to get. So I just went back to work, and then a mutual friend of mine met my coach through another friend, and I guess he told him that, like, hey, a buddy that I work with is trying to fight. I know you're like an MMA coach. Like, what do you think you should do? He's like, call him. So my coach, Dante Rivera, called me on a Sunday for the first time. Never talked to him.
Right.
FaceTime me. I thought it was my buddy FaceTime me. I answered the phone. Dante's just like, you want to fight? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. And he said, I'll see you Monday. So that happened in 2020, like July 2020, right after I turned 25. And from there, it just, it's been go since. The first day I was in there, I really fell in love with the atmosphere, competing again, coming from wrestling. It like was a natural fit.
Sure.
The smell of the gym, everything like that, it just made me feel like I was back in wrestling, and the grind really, really brought me to, my roots.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You said you wrestled in high school down at Forked River?
Yeah, Lacey Township.
Lacey Township. Good wrestling programs down there.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you went to college. Where'd you wrestle in college?
Elizabethtown College,
okay,
Pennsylvania.
And how'd you do in college as a wrestler?
I did well. I think it was one of those things where I started wrestling late. I got into it. I tried it 8th grade. I wrestled like a couple matches. I wrestled at 105, a little guy. And then I actually played basketball my freshman year of high school. At the end of the year, I was watching one of my brother's wrestling matches, and I was like, dang, I really miss this atmosphere. Like, this is so cool to see in the high school level. So I quit basketball, and I begged the coach to let me on the wrestling team. He let me join. I practiced for a few practices, and then I wrestled one match my freshman year, lost. But that was like my sophomore year was like the first time I fully committed to wrestling. We actually did like a full year.
Right.
In that sport, you usually start young,
sure,
and you progress over time. So in those 2 years of high school wrestling, I progressed, and then I actually got the opportunity to wrestle in college, and that's where I feel like I finally like found myself in the sport and really like dedicated my life to it. So the progression was huge there. It was way better of a progression in college than it was in high school. I ended up I won a regional title there. I went to nationals. Didn't have a great national tournament, kind of, crap the bed, as they said.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a huge learning experience for me, and I feel like I really like learned a lot from the sport that I carry like to my day-to-day life now. So it's one of those things I owe a lot to the sport, and realistically without it, I probably wouldn't be fighting. So definitely my technique skyrocketed in college, and then also just like the mindset that wrestling brings really was a big thing for me.
And then you transitioned into boxing.
Yeah.
How did that come about? You said your dad was a big boxing fan, and
he's
actually your hands coach, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right, so how did your dad get you involved in boxing?
My dad boxed in Newark, New Jersey when he was growing up. His dad actually didn't want him to get into boxing. My abuelo used to box too in Cuba and stuff like that. He was born in Cuba, my father. They came in like 63 or something like that, or 65, something like that. So when he came the U.S., just, coming as an immigrant and stuff like that, it was just like instilled in his being of like that's how my grandfather raised him. And everything's like, yeah, if you want something, you got to go get it. You got to grind to get it. Nothing's given to you. They came over here with nothing. So like growing up, he had that in sports where he really, dedicated himself to baseball and stuff like that. And he always wanted to box growing up, watching fights with his dad and stuff. But he didn't get that opportunity. And then he did when he was a little older. He boxed in the Golden Gloves, and he took second in the Golden Gloves in Newark, New Jersey. But he had to end up taking over for his parents' supermarket and stuff like that, so he couldn't really fully invest his time into that dream. And then me coming into it after wrestling was done, I had no means to compete. I mean, I guess it was like we were watching boxing stuff, and then I talked about like I would like to try it, and then he kind of just like devoted some time to teach me the basics and stuff like that. And I mean, watching those videos now of me like training boxing back in, I don't know, 2016 or 2017, it looks crazy because my technique was so bad and stuff, but that was just kind of an avenue for me to try to get into competing again. And also it was a cool time to, just spend with my dad, and we would go into the basement and train, do mitts and stuff like that. And he never pushed me to do it. He never said like, I want you to do this. Mm-hmm. But once I went to him with the idea of it, he was like, I'll give you every, bit of my free time you want, and we'll go from there. And it didn't work out in the sense of boxing, but I think that really helped build the platform for what we are now in the sense of like our working coaching and our relationship between coaching and me being the athlete.
Right. It
works really well. I mean, we butt heads sometimes, but as a father and son who doesn't, spend a lot of time with each other. So it's kind of a never-ending session of like kind of coaching and going back. But I try to make sure that we turn that off sometimes and just hang out as father and son.
So did you have an amateur career as a boxer? You were saying earlier off air you couldn't really get a lot of fights.
Yeah, no. So I actually won a Diamond Gloves title, but in boxing I didn't fight anyone. So I had 4 walkovers, which are basically 4 forfeits. Like the opponent didn't show up. Right. And after spending probably 2 or 3 months training for that really turned me off to the sport. It was like a whole summer I dedicated to trying to box and stuff like that. So after that I was like, the training was fun. I really liked the grit of the training that we were doing, but to not get the reward of competing and really seeing that, the training pay off, it kind of turned me off to the sport. So we weren't as serious. I was still doing some, training with my dad here and there before I started fighting MMA after the whole boxing ordeal, but it wasn't serious at that point. It was kind of just I was lifting weights. I was once in a while he'd ask me if I wanted to do mitts. I would say sure, but that was really it.
Right. So you called, or actually Dante Rivera calls you, invites you to his gym to fight. Now, any experience before that with the BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
No, just wrestling.
So you have a wrestling background, you've done some boxing, so now you go see Dante Rivera. So that ties everything together to be a good mixed martial artist now you're training with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the difference between wrestling and then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
So, Jiu-Jitsu is just way more of a chess game. It's way more of a thinking's man game, where wrestling's way more pace and just hard nose, gas pedal down. It's reaction based. Where Jiu-Jitsu, I feel like, is way more setups, technique, and just thinking, where you're setting up and stuff. Or wrestling, you can win just being a force when it comes to pressure and cardio.
Yep.
Or you can win matches like that. Jiu-Jitsu, it's really not going to work out for you if you're versing a technician. You have to know the technique, and you have to be smart with every little movement that you make and every different position. So it was really cool for me to get into that and then realize as somebody that wrestled in that high pace environment, and then going to this, it was this is way more, like I said, like a chess game. It was way more fun for me. Wrestling, I always said, it was a love-hate relationship with me. I loved the grind of it. But after a hard match, you're beat up, and your body's hurting, your shoulders are hurting, your knees, everything's hurting. Where jiu-jitsu, obviously you could still get hurt and stuff, but you could roll for 10 minutes straight, and it's almost fun because it's like I said, it's a thinking man's game. So it's your technique versus theirs, and the better man will win.
So you started with Dante Rivera in 2020, you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how long are you with him before you start your amateur career in MMA?
I think it was 3 months. I trained with him as a white belt, never did jiu-jitsu. I trained for 3 months, and after 3 months, I had my first fight for CFFC as an amateur, and I actually won by Americano, key lock.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that jiu-jitsu pay off in fighting was really cool.
Right.
And it was one of those things where it's like, so you're saying I could just use my wrestling, get somebody to the ground, and then use what I learned in jiu-jitsu? Obviously, it's not that easy. But after my first fight, seeing that and seeing that work out that way was really cool because, I mean, I was training so hard in jiu-jitsu to learn all these things. And then my first fight, I get a submission. It was really cool to see that, pay off.
We'll talk about the amateur career.
Went 6-0 as an amateur. And at that point, I was trying to fight as often as I could. But like I said, I started in 2020, so that was like when they were going back and forth with COVID and stuff.
Right.
So a lot of fight cards were falling through, and a lot of things were, up in the air where you were going to fight, and then like your opponent had COVID or something like that, or you're there and they get tested, they pop positive. One of those things where you didn't know when you're going to fight or if you're actually going to fight. So it was kind of frustrating in that aspect, but yeah, I just tried to ring off as many fights as I could and just get all the experience I could. And just trusting Dante, him telling me, like, this is all just for experience. Like, we got bigger goals going forward. So, yeah, I fought 6 times as an amateur. My second fight was kind of gritty. In amateur, if you start off, there's advanced rules and then, the first set of rules that before you're, like, over 3 fights, I think, in Jersey, you can't, strike on the ground. Or you can't knee in the head, you can't kick in the head. So there's a different rule set. So for me, I can't strike on the ground as a wrestler. When I take you down, now I have to only use my jiu-jitsu or body shots. It's kind of a difficult thing to transition to when you're training in the gym for a full MMA fight, and then you have to do this rule set. So that was a learning curve. But after those first few fights, once I got a full rule set, I think that just training in the room I trained with at Dante Rivera is really prepared me for that. And I went 6-0 and I had I think 5 finishes as an amateur. My second fight being the only fight that went the distance. And like I said, it was gritty. The kid was kind of wild, strong striker. But that was a fight where I definitely had to deal with some adversity. It was clear that I wasn't like ready to be any further than I was at that point in my career. It was good that I got that type of fight that early in my career because, dealing with getting dropped and stuff like that, it was one of those things I'm glad it happened that early in my career. I think it prepared me for moving forward and winning an amateur belt, and then I ended up defending that belt 3 times before I went pro.
All right. So then whose idea was it to turn pro? Who said you're ready? Was it you or did Dante say it's time?
Well, Dante was the one that was really I was waiting for his, grace of I think you're ready. And a lot of people in the game, when they're asking, what's next for you, a lot of people are always saying, like, after, like, 3 or 4 fights, they're like, are you going to go pro or are you going to go pro? And I was just trying to stay patient with it and just wait till Dante was like, all right, let's move up and go pro. And when he did, I think that happened in 2023 or something like that. I was very excited about that, and it was just like a little milestone that I could finally check off, and I was super excited to do. But yeah, it was all Dante when it comes to the game planning of my career.
So you're fighting in the CFFC. What weight?
205 light heavyweight.
So what do you weigh when you're not
Right
fighting?
now, I currently weigh probably 235 pounds.
235. So you're dropping 30 pounds.
Yeah, I feel like I naturally hang out around 230 up to 235. If I get over 240, that's me being super, not disciplined with my diet, but sometimes that happens. I come from an Italian and Cuban family that I love to eat, so that's where that's where I draw the line. If I'm over 240, I'm too heavy, but I usually hang out a little over 230.
Just out of pure curiosity, take us through the process of how you drop from 235 to 205. How many weeks to drop that weight?
Usually a fight camp, ideally if you get a fight lined up early, it's it could be up to 10 weeks. Most of the time it's like 8 weeks. So if that's the case, diet has to change, and you have to start thinking that you're fueling yourself for your workouts. And in a fight camp, you're doing, there's days where you're doing 3 workouts in a day. So it's not if you're going to lose weight, because you will, because you're burning so many calories in a day. It's just making sure that you're fueling yourself correctly and using, like eating the right things to feel good for those sessions. And that's why I talk to anyone that asks. I always say you're going to lose the weight. I'm training enough where I'm going to lose the weight. And a lot of times, if you looked at my meals that I eat in a day, during fight camp, you'd be like, you're eating a lot. You're not on a diet, but it's just cleaner options. And it's so I feel good for that next session, because, after 3 workouts in a day, the next day you're feeling banged up and stuff. Right. It's more about just feeling yourself for the next session. And then towards the end, you do a water load and stuff like that, and you're cutting out certain nutrients and stuff to almost dehydrate yourself down the last 10 pounds.
Yep.
But it's just a process of over time, so many sessions, you're going to lose weight.
Tell us about your pro career now. How many fights have you had?
5-0.
Okay. And title defenses?
2.
2.
So I won my title, I think, in 2023. And then I've had 2 title defenses since. So
has there been any fight other than the one as an amateur where you felt like you were really pushed to your limit, or somebody really challenged you?
My last fight went the distance, 4 rounds, and that's definitely a fight where, I think I'd showcase at least my cardio. Right. As a 205er, being able to, keep the pressure and really fight a tough, gritty fight for 4 rounds. I think that was one of the fights where I knew going into it I had a tough opponent. He's fought in the big stages of Bellator and stuff like that.
Yep.
He had more experience than me, so going into it was just, I knew that was a possibility, because like I said, he's been around the block and he's fought on high-level stages. So just going into that camp, I knew that I just got to train to prepare for, a 4-round fight.
Right.
Where I can push the pace for 4 rounds and feel good doing it.
Yeah, I was at the fight, and you outclassed him, but it seemed like he was just trying to hang on. He was trying not to get knocked out by you.
Yeah. He's, like I said, he was a well-rounded fighter with a lot of experience, so he knew how to, stay safe and in certain positions kind of just keep me at bay.
Right.
To a point. So, but yeah, I think that was a really good experience for me in the sense of my career moving forward. Know that I knew that I can go 4 rounds, but after you're done with that fight, looking back on it, I'm proud of the performance, and I'm happy that the camp went the way it did and everything worked out, because I was ready for that type of fight.
Yeah, because that's a long time to fight.
Yeah,
5-minute rounds is a long time. 20 minutes, that's a very long time to be in a fight.
Definitely.
Because there's no breaks in MMA.
No, you can't really hide in those 5-minute rounds. So, and that's what I tell people. It's one of those things how'd you feel afterwards? I'm I just fought for 20 minutes. I'm pretty tired.
Right.
But that's what you train for, and that's why your sparring rounds will turn into, I was doing 6 rounds straight in sparring, because in CFFC there was a chance for a 5th round if it was tied going after the 4th. So I had to be prepared to do 5. And usually if you're in a camp, you usually do 1 extra round of what you could possibly do, just to make sure that you could push that cardio. So I knew going into it I was ready for that, but like I said, when you get to that point and you look back on it, I was definitely proud of the sense that I was pushing the pace still.
How have you progressed in your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
We train at Dante's Jiu-Jitsu basically every day I'm there, so I think I've progressed a lot in my Jiu-Jitsu, and I take a lot of pride in being a purple belt under Dante Rivera.
Right.
And I just have a lot of fun doing it. I feel like I could roll and have fun doing that for hours. It's one of those things I thoroughly enjoy. Like I said, it's a lot less impact compared to wrestling. So coming up, doing wrestling and transition that, it's just a lot of fun.
So what's the next step?
I'm hoping that I have the opportunity to fight on the bigger stage coming up, stuff like Contender Series, or just getting a short notice fight for the UFC. That's been the goal since I went pro, is to be in the UFC and become a name in the UFC in the division, and really show that I'm supposed to be there, and my talent and my coaches have got me to that level. So that's what we're looking at next. I don't have any updates or new news on that, but that's what we're looking at.
And if not, are you going to defend your title again?
Yeah, whatever, if I have to keep busy, in that sense, you can't wait around in the sport. So if that doesn't work out and I have to keep busy, definitely would defend my title again, or look to gain another belt or something like that. Right. Whatever my coaches and my team think is best.
Yeah, so now UFC's changed over the years. So now it's really to get into the UFC, it's either through the Contender Series, a short notice fight, or what's the other series that they have?
They have the Ultimate Fighter.
The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
So that's really the road to get into the UFC now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the fact that the sport has progressed so much, and there's so many more fighters now than there was, even like 5 years ago. That's really the filter that they're using, is the Contender Series being the main one where you get the most fighters into the UFC now through Contender Series. Mm-hmm. But there are options like a short notice fight where if somebody backs out, they go through the whole roster, and then if they can't find a replacement, they'll go to the guys that are basically next up on the regional scene. And so there's that option, and then the Ultimate Fighter is also an option, but it's very tough, I think, now to go through the Ultimate Fighter. Well, that's at least the from what I understand is if you don't win it, it's tough to get that look to go to the next level unless you really made an impact on the show and you have a really big personality or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, those are really the three options to get in, and it's definitely a tough process now. Like I said, the sport's progressed so much. There's so many fighters, so getting that opportunity is life changing, and it's like every fighter's goal.
You also mentioned that you have a girlfriend who's also a professional fighter. She's a boxer.
Yes.
And also undefeated. How does that help in your training and dating somebody who actually gets it and understands what you're going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, she's a pro boxer. She actually just fought this past weekend. She won an interim world title. She's now 11-0, and like you said, we live the same lifestyle. We don't fight in the same sport, but camps go the same way, nutrition goes the same way, and we really help each other out in that aspect. When I'm in camp, if she's not in camp, she's cooking, and she could cook great. So it's I get home and there's a prepared meal, or she's always asking if she could help me with anything when it comes to even workouts. She helps me with footwork and stuff for boxing.
Right. And
then even when she's in her off season stuff, she comes and trains at Dante sometimes, and got into a little jiu-jitsu, so it's cool. We spend a lot of time together doing that, and it's definitely I'm super thankful that I found somebody that gets my lifestyle, and because it's a super lonely sport in that aspect. There's a lot of time where you're constantly driving to the gym or coming home, or you're beat multiple workouts in a day. That type of lifestyle definitely isn't for every relationship, but with me and her, we both fully understand what we're doing and our goals. So, I mean, she drives to Philly from Lacey Township every day, which is an hour and 15.
Right.
So I have nothing but respect for her grind, and likewise for her to me. So if anything, we're always building each other up, and I think that really helps, prepare for a fight and stuff. It's good to have that support.
So you come from an immigrant background with your parents. What advice can you give to somebody who's young, doesn't come from money, they're not affluent, struggling? What advice will you give them to better themselves and to get out of an impoverished situation or a tougher situation?
I would say find your passion and chase something that you actually thoroughly enjoy, because at the end of the day, life's short, and I think if you're caught up thinking about the money or what you should be doing, or the norms of society where they say you should be doing this at this age, you should have a house at this age, you should be in this type of career at this age, I think that only causes pressure and causes you to make decisions to fit in those boxes. But I think if you find something you thoroughly enjoy and you're passionate about and you chase that, you're gonna have way more fulfillment in life. And that's something that I'm glad that I found when I did, because I was kind of in a spot where I was, at a crossroads. I was 25, and I was I should be getting a career. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And then this whole fighting thing kind of fell into my lap in the sense of meeting my coach. And I think it's just one of those things that it was meant to be. And I'm very very glad that it happened when it did. But I would definitely say you have to find something you're passionate about and chase that dream. Because at the end of the day, we only get a certain amount of years on this earth, and you can't get time back. So definitely do something that makes you happy.
Another question I have for you, because I've actually interviewed Dante Rivera and some other fighters from his gym. There seems to be a great family atmosphere, a lot of loyalty, a lot of camaraderie. Where does that come from? How is that instilled in such a competitive industry?
That's all Dante. Like you said, you met him, so you know he's a huge personality, and he preaches that to us. Like, I mean, from the jump when I first started training there, he always said, like, the fact that we're so close as a team. I mean, he's always inviting us over to watch fights, for dinners. I mean, we've gone out to the water park together. We've gone out to Six Flags together. And I just feel like a lot of other gyms aren't doing that. But that causes that, that family atmosphere to start and then really, prosper into like what it is now, where everyone in the gym is, seeing success, and we're always there for each other's camps and training sessions. So it's one of those things that I think if the team is close, you're all going to get behind each other when like the time comes, whether it's a camp or it's a new opportunity, and we push each other just like you would push like your brother or cousin or something like that. And I think that's why there's so much success coming out of Dante Rivera's.
Well, congratulations on your world championship and your title defense, and hopefully you get to take that next step up to the UFC.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.